Hi everybody, Dan Ullman here, reminding you that DRF's Breeders' Cup package is all your handicapping essentials for racing's championship event. Includes DRF All Access PPs, clocker reports, betting strategies, and lots more. Get your package today at shop.drf.com.
Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux and Mike Beer here with the Daily Racing Forum. A huge betting menu this Saturday out at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. They have a 12-race program, and all of those races but one, Mike, are graded. And a little bit different this year, the Classic is going to fall as the 8th race on the card. So it's going to be involved in multiple sequences in terms of betting. We're going to take a look at that late pick 5, which kicks off with the Breeders' Cup Classic. And, you know, we made a preview for Friday. We're making this one for Saturday. When you compare the two, did you find one of the days to be trickier?
I thought Saturdays was way trickier. That's probably just, because for personal reasons, I might have horses that I actually, like and want to bet on Friday. And I thought Saturday was a lot tougher, man. I had a tough time falling in love with horses in this sequence.
All right, so we're going to kick it off, as I mentioned, with the Breeders' Cup Classic, and we'll skip to a couple of replays here. First, with a horse that's 3-1 on the morning line, Fierceness. And we know what he's been able to do this year, Mike, in terms of his resume. And he has stacked up some really big wins, but we know that he's been a little bit of a head scratcher as well in several of his performances. And we're looking at the Travers. Obviously, he got tested at the 1.25 mile distance one more time, a much better result than the Derby. But, he's game here. He almost gets beat by the filly Thorpeda Anna. Your thoughts on his performance here and now in the Classic in general?
He ran okay in here, to be sure. Listen, you're right. He saw out the 1.25 miles, although you could see there at the end, he wasn't exactly relishing it there. He was getting a little tired. And the concerning thing for me, Ashley, is he was getting tired after just sort of sitting on top of a pretty moderate pace around the track that day. This pace isn't going to be moderate. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Fierceness can deal with that, because the one time they threw some real pace at him was in the Kentucky Derby, and he was terrible in that race.
So you talked a little bit about pace. I think in terms of a wild card is the horse that unfortunately draws the outside in some regard. The 14 Next to is now going to, as you say this, cut back to 1.25 miles after sort of kind of relishing at those odd distances from 1 3/8 miles to 1 3/4 miles. We'll take a look at his most recent performance at Parks, and there's no doubt about it. He has an extremely impressive resume when you look at his wins, Mike, and what he's been able to do. And I know not necessarily grade 1 waters, but the numbers that he's been able to stack and his margins of victory, they're impressive. Now the question is, what do you make out of him post 14, cutting back and now jumping up to this level?
Yeah, he's a really cool horse. And listen, I think that the Connections deserve a lot of credit for letting him run in this race and just, sort of see what happens. We already know what he can do in those longer distance races. You mentioned, as far as the pace goes, unfortunately for Next, they're not going to go 6 furlongs in 1:16 in this race. He is going to be chasing some wicked fast fractions in this race, and I'll be shocked if he's able to deal with it and still be around at the end.
Yeah, I thought the interesting thing was he's 8-1 on the morning line. I think he will be much higher than that, but never know. I just thought looking at the morning line, it kind of strikes me as a little bit odd in this field. Now, when you look at some others in here, we're not going to show replays, but curious to get your thoughts on the Japanese runners. There's 3 of them. You also have City of Troy. There's a lot to dive into in this year's Classic.
There really is. In a lot of ways, it's a fascinating race. To me, there's no horse, unless you just believe that City of Troy is going to transfer his turf form to dirt, then there's just no standout in here. It's just sort of a wide open race. As far as the Japanese horses go, I have a pretty strong opinion about the 3 of them. I'm sure people will disagree, and that's fine. I didn't think the 6 or the 7 had any chance at all in this race. And I think the number 1, Forever Young, has a big chance.
All right. I don't know if I would go that far. I didn't use him on my ticket, but I did think about Derma Sotogake. I know the last 3 have not been great. Maybe his form has trailered off. But you go back to last year's Breeders' Cup Classic. He really threw it in, and that's why I couldn't use him in the pick 5. I think maybe underneath I can make a case for him, especially at a good price. But I'm with you. I think Forever Young for Japan is their best chance, and in my opinion, my top pick in this year's Classic. I think it was between him and City of Troy, and just looking at the Derby performance and then him bouncing back after so much time off for various reasons, I think he looks extremely tough in this spot. Anyone else catch your eye, or horses that you were on the fence about using and decided to toss?
Yeah, there are a few of those. First of all, City of Troy. I really respect him, and I respect their Connections for trying this. And again, if he handles dirt, he'll win. But there's just no way I could bet him. I'll get knocked out of everything by him, and I wouldn't bet a nickel on this horse as the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But we'll see. I mean, the horses that I was on the fence about, Arthur's Ride, I feel like he's at his best when he's able to just make the lead, and I got to believe they're on ascend here. They have a long run to the first turn for him to get there. So I think he's dangerous in this race. I wound up not using him. I think Newgate is interesting. He drew a tough post, but I think he wants to go this distance. And I think there's a lot of room to improve for that horse. So I could see using him, longer prices. I'm a fan of Pyrenees, the 8, and I'll probably try to get him in there, although I'm not quite convinced he's good enough. The 2 Highland Falls to me is a ridiculous price on the morning line at 20 to 1. He's on my ticket anyway. But if he's 20 to 1 at post time, I'll probably just bet him to win.
Yeah, you have to think with Highland Falls, he has the ability to be somewhat close to the action early on, where you do see there's the deep closers that we see every year, the Sierra Leone types. You have the Arthur's Ride types, where Highland Falls could easily be sitting, 4 lengths off the pace early and just have the jump on everybody else. So you bring up a good point about him, 20 to 1 on the morning line. Look at him last time out going 1.25 miles. I think that says enough. We'll move to the next leg of the sequence, which is the second leg. At 1.3 miles ace, it's the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Now, we already have some scratches announced in here, but still a great field. I found this to be a nice field top to bottom. And in terms of replays, we'll kick it off here with the number 3, Cinderella's Dream, who has had a couple of efforts now in New York since coming stateside. And what's there to say other than she's 2 for 2 here in North America?
Yeah, really good. She looked really good in both of her races too. The distance, I guess, is a little bit of a concern for her. I think she's going to handle it, but you never know. This will be her first time getting out to 1 3/8 miles. So we'll see if she has the same kick, because as you can see here, and in particular in the race 2-back, the grade 1 2-back, where she beat a really good field of 3-year-old fillies with a huge finish. I mean, she's a real strong kicker. We'll see if she can do it over 1 3/8 miles, but I think she's super talented, and I'm using her. I just feel like she makes a lot of sense. She has missed time since that race we just watched. She had a little bit of an issue, but you just sort of hope everything's fine with her, because she's really good.
Morning lane favorites, the 4, Warlike Goddess. And we don't typically see this anymore, Mike, right? A 7-year-old mare who's made consecutive appearances at the Breeders' Cup. She's participated in 3 of them. This will be her 4th. And when you look at her last 2, she's tackled the boys, which means not only male rivals, but means 1.5 miles. She gets 1.3 miles in here. What do you make of her, knowing that in her last 2, she's been narrowly defeated?
Yeah, I mean, she ran fine last time too against the boys, trying to win that Turf Classic up in New York. Again, with a race that she's won twice in the past. She ran fine in that. She was just second best in that race, but she ran fine. And you mentioned they ran her against the boys the last 2 years, and that was just a distance thing, because the last 2 years the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf 1 3/16 miles and 1.25 miles, and that's just too short for her. They wanted the longer race. This race is perfect for her. They ran her in this race in 2021 at Del Mar, 1 3/8 miles, and she ran huge. This is the right distance for her. This is the right race for her. She's 7 now. I think she's still capable of getting it done. You just have to always keep in mind with Warlike Goddess, trips are really, really important to her. She doesn't have a lot of speed. She's been compromised so many times in the past and gotten unlucky. But when things work out for her, she's good as anybody. I'm actually kind of rooting for her, actually. I'm a huge fan, and I'm glad they gave her a chance to get into this race one more time.
I'm shocked. You're a huge fan of a horse. Usually I hear the other way, but looking at this field, I agree with you. I mean, I've liked her for a very long time. And for me, it came back all the way when I was down at Gulfstream Park back in 2021. Fell in love with her then, and that's towards the beginning of her career. And now look what she's gone on to do. But these horses are obviously shorter prices on the morning line. I think there are others that have a shot in here, and wanted to get your opinion. I don't know, in terms of your ticket structure, were there bigger prices that you thought maybe were worth, including on a ticket?
Yeah, I mean, I personally went a little skinny in this race, mostly because, and listen, when I made the ticket, I don't have Warlike Goddess on there. We're only putting up 1 ticket here, but there will be plays that I make that have Warlike Goddess in there, because in a lot of ways, I think she's the horse to beat. But I was all about the 2 3-year-old fillies in here, really. Cinderella's Dream and the number 7, Content. I don't know what kind of price Content's going to be in here. But I think she has some real excuses for her recent races. Her form prior to that on firm ground is really, really good. And I remember they shipped her over here last year for the Juvenile Fillies Turf. I don't know, man. I still go back and look at that race. She was way the best in there and just got going way too late. I think she's really talented.
She's a horse I didn't use on my ticket because I have mixed feelings. I agree with you. I think she's going to love firm ground. I think you go down the page, Go to the last year since then. Every time she's had yielding or soft conditions, she just hasn't been at her best. So I agree with that. Was a little concerned about having those 3 races within about a month of each other. It just seems like a lot, and then shipping, but it's Aidan O'Brien. He obviously knows way better than I. So I think my factor on using her, I probably will use her more in the exotic wagers that I play, but it'll depend on price. I don't want to take too short of a price on her. I think for me to find her intriguing, she has to be a little bit of a sleeper. So 6 to 1, I would hope that maybe we could get 8 to 1. Maybe I'm being greedy, but that would be sort of the price range that I'm looking for with the 7 content. We'll move on to the middle leg of the sequence. The grade 1 Breeders' Cup Sprint, 6 furlongs on the dirt. And let's toss to a replay, and then I'm going to toss it to you. I found this race really tricky to handicap. The replay that we're going to look at here is at Keeneland. It's going to involve 2 horses, Federal Judge and Nakatomi. And Nakatomi is a little bit more of a closer. You can see Federal Judge. That isn't the case. He's able to win this pretty impressively on the front end. He's going to draw clear by 5.5 lengths. Do either of these horses kind of intrigue you in this spot, or maybe both passable in this spot?
Yeah, I don't. This race I thought was really tough. Nakatomi definitely interested me. I'm using this horse for sure. As a matter of fact, I made it my top pick in the race. But to me, there's no standout here. There's nobody to like really like in this race. My opinion on this race is, I know who I don't like. Horses who I absolutely will not use, and Federal Judge is one of those horses. I'll have this horse nowhere on my tickets. Skelly, the number 11, nowhere on my tickets. The number 10, Mulligan, who's the second choice on the morning line, nowhere on my tickets. I just sort of wanted to reach out for this. More than anything else, actually, isn't there just a ton of speed in this race?
Yeah, and I mean, we're not saying anything riveting, right? It's the Breeders' Cup Sprint. There's a ton of speed. We expect that. But I think the concern is with these horses, some of them have been really unchallenged on the front end. They have just been on paper the fastest horses. They've caught flyers. And then when you're going a distance of 6 furlongs, it's tough to catch them. 7 Ace, I think, is a different ball game. There are horses in here that if this was at 7 Ace, I'd be all about. But because it's 6 furlongs, I also don't have interest in them. So I think we're on the same page. I think that is sort of the upside and the selling point on Nakatomi, is that if the pace is that quick and there's a meltdown, hopefully he can catch them late. He wasn't unable to do that with Federal Judge in the Phoenix, but Federal Judge made the lead and made it easy. So I think with, more of a pressured situation, horses like Nakatomi can excel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and don't be fooled by the posted fractions there from the Phoenix last time, because it looks like Federal Judge just went wicked fast on the lead and kept going. It was great performance. He was absolutely loose on a track that was carrying speed all day, and Nakatomi was compromised trying to close. I thought just the fact that Federal Judge, and by the way, Federal Judge won at Saratoga 2 starts back on another track that was just speed all day long, and he made the lead. I don't know. I think he's all dressed up with nowhere to go in here. He's the morning line favorite. Same with Mulligan, who's been really good this year. I'm not knocking him, but he's a short price stepping into a race where they're going to go way faster on the lead, and he's going to have to deal with that. I just don't think it's worth taking a short price on that horse. The only speed horse I'm using, Ashley, you can feel free to disagree here, or maybe you agree, I don't know, is Straight No Chaser. I'm not sure that he isn't the fastest horse early in here.
No, and I gotta say, I don't use him on my ticket, but really impressed with the job Dan Blacker has done with this horse to keep him together, right, and to get him into form. And I thought what he did last time out was wicked good, very good. And I'm not sure he obviously faced what he's facing here, but the way that he did it to come off that layoff and just make his, second start in well over a year, I agree with you. I think he's the fastest on paper, and we'll see what happens here, making that second start since May of this year. Just want to get your thought on Japan in this race. They have 2 horses, and it's always hard to kind of gauge what they're going to do stateside. But I decided to make the decision when I looked at this race to actually use the 9 remake, just thinking about what we've talked about, a horse that can maybe close from off of it, and a horse that you can see has beaten Don Frankie, who he has to face again, or has been on the losing side of it. But this is a horse that, when in Saudi, was very impressive and beat Skelly, who he has to face again. Yeah,
I don't really have anything to add to that, Ashley. I'm using this horse for sure. Him and Nakatomi were really the 2 horses I was most interested in here, and the 2 that I'm really going to try to get through this race with.
And similar running styles from them too. We'll move to the 4th leg of the sequence. Race number 11 from Del Mar is the Breeders' Cup Mile here on the grass for 3-year-olds and upward. And this is an interesting event for a couple of reasons. I feel like when I looked at this race as a whole, I mean, Carl Spackler, he's good, but don't like Carl Spackler from Post 12. And you look at some others in here, you have 3-year-old fillies, tackling the boys, a lot to dive into. Who kind of kicked it off for you when you looked at this race as a must-use, your kind of first horse that you gravitated towards?
Yeah, that's probably the 6 notable speech for Godolphin and Buick. I mean, I know he's coming off of a really disappointing performance. That was over soft ground. I feel like I can mitigate that one. He has one other race that's a little confusing, that St. James's Palace, where he didn't really fire his best shot. His other races are superior, and he is another horse who just looks like this quick 2-turn mile here in California. It's just really going to suit this horse. To me, and there are a lot of good horses in here. To me, Notable Speech is way the horse to beat.
Yeah, I think he's the horse to beat. He's the horse that I use. I actually went pretty skinny here because I mentioned I'm not happy with some of the post draws, and I do think the Euro shippers have the upper hand in this event, as we've seen in the past. I threw a little bit of a wild card in here. I think she's too short on the morning line at 5-1, but the inside runner, the number 1, Ramatuelle, this is a filly that's by Justify. She's done everything right in her career. I think last time out, beautiful performance, very different than Notable Speech. Loved the soft ground, but I thought her late turn foot was good, and curious to see her now go a mile from the 7 Ace. If I would knock her a little bit. I don't know how the inside draw is going to work for her. Kind of looking at where she's been in her races overseas, but I thought she was just a little bit of a wild card. I think we could get a better price on her.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think she's really interesting here. I also sort of echo your sentiments that the 5-1 more line doesn't thrill me. But I do think she can win her. She was super impressive last time. I think the concern with her is going to be, is she as good at a mile as she is in some of the shorter races? Because they tried her, the 2 Group 1s going this distance over there, and she just sort of came up short at the end. I personally feel like she ran really well in both of those mile races, though. I'm not worried at all about the distance with her. I do want to wait and see what kind of price she is, but I could easily use this horse. I'm using Diego Velasquez as well for Aidan O'Brien. I just feel like they tried him going longer. It didn't work out. He's better going shorter distances. And I like, they've run this horse 3 times on left-handed turf courses over in Ireland, and he won all 3 of those races. So you don't have to worry about that. I like that about him. And then the only other horse for me that I have to use in here is the 8, More Than Looks. He's going to need a trip, but this horse is going to be flying at the end of this race.
Yeah, and just those last 2, I mean, he's been second behind Carl Spackler, but just been flying late, and you wonder here if he gets the right setup, and a horse that we've only seen twice this year. This has been like a very mindful campaign, it feels like, from Cherie DeVaux and Victory Racing Partners. So that's the 11th race. We will move on to the final leg of the sequence. It's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. $1 million here on the line. Huge field. I think from a betting standpoint, this may be one of my favorite Breeders' Cup races on Saturday. I just felt like it's a pretty good field and pretty wide open.
Yeah, it really is. So do you have like a really strong opinion in here as far as to say it's your favorite betting race, or is it just because you feel like there are really interesting horses to fool around?
I think it's interesting. I think I needed coverage in terms of a pick 5. I think if I'm looking at other wagers I'd bet, trifectas could pay very good money here. I think it's, it really depends who you like or who you don't like. I will go on the opinion, and you said it earlier, horses that you're going to toss. I'm not going to use Saudi Crown. I was not blown away by his performance last time out at Ellis Park. I know the mile configuration is odd there, but he did what he needed to do. I just don't know how enamored I was with the performance, and people probably have different opinions. You might have a different opinion. Another horse that I decided not to use might come back to bite me when you look at the connections is Muth. As someone that liked Muth last time out, it's a head scratcher. I think it's positive to see him back in here, and maybe, if I'm playing exotics, I'll use him, but in terms of top spot, I went for prices.
Man, I couldn't love those 2 opinions any more than I love them. I mean, first of all, I don't get Muth at all. I've never liked this horse. And actually, I take that back. I loved this horse's debut when they just let him use big speed and blow that field out. And then I look at every one of his races since then, and this horse has never been on the lead again. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I don't like him. I've never liked that horse. He's not on my tickets. Saudi Crown, same way. I know he was a pretty good 3-year-old last year. I was never sold on him. And he hasn't done anything to change my mind this year. I'm a little concerned that he has the rail and they're just going to send him and he's going to outrun this field to the lead. But if he wires me, he wires me. I'm not using that horse.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, he is one of those late bloomers, right? We didn't see him until late in his 3-year-old season, and he hit all those races. And to be honest, like a horse that you'd love to own. I mean, they campaigned him beautifully, and he's done a lot. But I just didn't see what I needed last time to use him here. And I think when you look at other horses, then I'm looking at, sure, a couple of shorter prices like Skipping Longstocking and Domestic Product, but two horses that I really like are big prices. I love Mufasa here. I think this horse is really intriguing. You kind of see the trajectory, something that you might not see, but Colonial, the track has been very fast. If you look at the dirt races, I get that. But then to see him then go on the slop in the Vosburg and win and draw clear, I think he's a wild card. I'm willing to use him here. And the other one, curious to get your thoughts if he makes your ticket or not. I wonder about the 3 Full Serrano, making the decision, let's not go for the Classic. Let's go back to a mile. I still think his Pacific Classic was pretty impressive when it was all said and done to finish second. And Mixed Dose, kind of snuck up on him and beat him by half a length.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that too, because that race does give him a chance in here, and maybe he just didn't want a mile and a quarter in that race. My issue with him, and I'm probably being too hard on him for it, is when he won here going the mile 2 starts back. I just didn't like that race, but whatever. This horse is going to be a big price in here, so I'm not knocking him. I'm using Domestic Products. I feel like that's an easy position to defend. And we'll see. I like what you said about Mufasa. I don't have him on my ticket, but I could easily use him too. I do like his races. I'm all about post time in here. We'll see if he can work out the right trick because he doesn't have a lot of speed, but I love that they gave this horse the chance and he deserved it to sort of play in the top races, the Met Mile and the Whitney. And I thought he ran really well both times. And so, and he's better going shorter anyway. So all about him in here. I think he classes up really, really well, and he's a great price on the morning line. And then, not that I don't want to, talk anybody into this other horse, but I am maybe the only member of the 3 Technique fan club, and I'm using him in this race. The one thing about 3 Technique is, and he's probably not good enough to win anyway, but he needs pace, which he doesn't always get. But when he does get pace to run at, and he got it last time at Churchill, he shows up. And I think they're going to go fast in front of him here, and he's going to be a zillion to 1, and I'm using him.
And you wonder, too, with 3 Technique, how he'll fare with the 2-turn mile.
Yeah,
the Churchill, I think it might be okay for him based on his style. But I think you bring up some great points as well, just to touch upon him post-time. I agree. Send him to New York, put him in the big races, see what he can do. And sure, he wasn't necessarily winning all of them. He did win the Carter, but I also like that after he was 3rd behind Arthur's Ride, they said, let's go back to a mile. Let's go back home. Let's go to Laurel. He blew him out of the water. I just feel like that gives him a lot of confidence coming into this race. And the other horse we talked about, Domestic Product, I've always liked him. I don't think he's necessarily lived up to my expectations. And I can say that backed him in the Derby. He was like my Derby pick and was disappointed. But you can see after that, they've made that conscious decision to now cut him back. And last time was at 7 Ace. But to me, his last 2 have been really good. I'm excited to see him now at a 2-turn mile. I think he's fine with that. I think a mile and a 16th as well. But I think being a little bit more conscious of the distance, that's the selling point on Domestic Product.
Yep. No, I agree with you. His last 2 races are really good. And you're right. Shorter is probably a little bit better for him. But as we were just talking about with some of the other horses, we're talking about all these 1-turn miles. You don't worry about 2 turns with Domestic Product. He's already proven he can do it.
All right, time for tickets here. You said it best earlier. I think this is a pretty challenging sequence. So I spent more money on Saturday's ticket than I will on Fridays. And you can see a ton of coverage here. I think the race that I went light on is the 11th. And obviously it's wide open. I just thought the Euros had the upper hand. I agree with you. I think the 6th looks extremely tough, but I also like the number 1, Ramatuelle. And just kind of backing through some of these races. The Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, we talked about the main 2 in there being Cinderella's Dream, as well as the number 4, Warlike Goddess. Still convinced Didia can get back on form. I'm kind of seeing some interviews with Nacho Correas and what he has said. I think at 12 to 1, she's a must use for me. So I used her. And then I talked about it. I think the last race was the most challenging. And I took a ton of coverage here and took coverage knowing that the 3 and the 12 figure to offer a ton of value. So a $108 ticket for me. And next we'll show your ticket, Mike. Curious to see where you're at with this in terms of your price and your selections.
Yeah, I didn't know where to really spread, actually, to be honest with you. I wanted to spread it, except for race 9, except for the Filly Mare Turf. I'm pretty set in my ways there. I don't have Warlike Goddess on the ticket, although I know she can win. Cinderella's Dream and Content are my horses in there. If I'm going to sort of try to live and die with the 2-3-year-old fillies, I don't know. I guess I could have used more in the Classic. I also sometimes think that when I look back at it, I could have used less and maybe just tried to get through it with the 1 and the 2. I don't know. I just didn't really love anybody in that race. I just know I'm not using the two favorites in the Classic, the two morning line favorites anyway. And then, you know, you can see down to the bottom there, you know, 5, 8, and 9 in the dirt mile. They're the only 3 horses that I was really interested in, particularly post time and domestic product. I mean, I feel like if I could somehow survive the first 4 legs here and just get alive to those. I mean, I have 3 Technique on there, which, you know, I'm not expecting him to win. But if I got to the dirt mile and I was alive to post time and domestic product, I would take my chances.
You know, you mentioned using some big prices in here, Pyrenees, right, on your ticket, and 3 Technique, but that's what Breeders' Cup Day is about, right? We do see some massive upsets when you go back historically, and to just use favorites, that's not what we're here for. We're here to make money and try to, you know, construct a ticket that you think is a winning one. And I will say, looking at this, the only thing that scares me, and I have gone back and forth on it, is Sierra Leone. You know, I feel like it's kind of a similar story of like domestic product where had high hopes for him and it just, you know, hasn't panned out. It has as of late, but Sierra Leone, I was so on the fence about, and I just feel like he's going to have that big breakthrough performance. It's probably when I'm not backing him. So maybe it comes this weekend out at Del Mar, but have to think, you know, he may get the setup that he needs if the pace is quick. That's
why I put him in there. But I think we both know, and I think everybody who's watching this video knows, we know exactly where Sierra Leone's going to finish on Saturday. He'll be running at the end, and he'll finish a really close second or third.
Well, that is our analysis here for the late pick 5 on Saturday at Del Mar. As we mentioned, it gets kicked off with the Breeders' Cup Classic, the 8th race of 12 on the card. And the final leg of the sequence is the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Best of luck this weekend.
Hey, let me give you a hot tip. If you liked the content that you've seen before, click on the like and subscribe button right here. And of course, for more DRF videos like Race of the Days, stakes previews, click on the videos right here.